Are there any questions? Do we want to have microphones? Okay. And while you ask questions, I'm going to prep up the next set of slides so we can do this efficiently.
Okay. Well, my question has to do with federal lands that are within the boundaries of the states. Isn't there some, let me see how to phrase this. My understanding is that, like, for example, Idaho, because Idaho entered the Union at a later date, the federal government still has jurisdiction over 70% of the land within the border of Idaho. Is that accurate, or would that be inaccurate?
Okay, so what you're saying is accurate because the federal government assumes, you know what happens when anybody assumes, but the federal government assumes that they still have the authority over actual sovereign states' property. Show me in the Constitution where they can retain any authority. As a matter of fact, it's in Article 1, Section 8, I think it's subsection 17, that dictates what the federal government can possess land for. And none of it is having to do with departments of forestry, EPA, whatever you want to do. It's literally for very limited scope things. For the seat of government, Washington, D.C., and it says it can only be 10 nautical miles by 10 nautical miles. Virginia took their part back, by the way. But they can have forts, they can have military training, they can have posts, like post offices. Those are the necessary and proper things that they need, but for them to possess forest of a sovereign state is unconstitutional. And the basis that they started making these things, these are all regulations and statutes, once again, that they've gone outside the scope of the Constitution, and they didn't go back to the states and say, hey, can we do this? No, they assumed their supremacy over these things. And they used John Marshall's precedences, and they built off of those unconstitutional footings to do all of that. Next question.
There's a movement to amend the Constitution to overturn the Citizens United case, Supreme Court case. So why is an amendment required for that? But was there an amendment that overturned Dred Scott?
No. No, and as a matter of fact, that's a completely different presentation, if you don't mind, as far as the conventions and amendments and those types of things, because I would probably stand here for a while and talk about some of the things that are going on, my position on the Article 5 convention process and so forth. And but no, there's been no overturning. And as a matter of fact, just real quick in summary, my position on any constitutional convention or Article 5 process, it's a waste of time. It does not solve the non-compliance. Madison didn't try to assume a new convention to amend it when they created the Sedition Act. What did he do? He basically said these are all violations. He went to the other states and we hope you agree with this. But they didn't. And so what he ended up having to do was their only last bag that they had was called nullification. And they said, we will nullify these laws and we will not enforce them. That was the last, act that they could do because the other states would not support the Constitution as they were duty-bound to do. Because, and we'll get into this in this, everybody takes an oath. If you're a political officer, and there are other offices that require oaths. And so, anyway, question over here, and then over here, down here.
Do you know anything about the history of executive orders?
I can tell you that Washington's first executive order, I was probably going to cover this tonight, or maybe not. If you read his first executive order, it is the recognition for this nation of Thanksgiving. And it has nothing to do with pilgrims and Indians and people starving. It had everything to do with recognizing the divine hand of providence in granting them this Constitution. So go read that first executive order. But in my first book, I do talk about how the president has strayed, the presidency has strayed in using their power in legislating, because executive orders are strictly, and Washington did this, as military orders. He gets a law, here comes the law from Congress, okay, and his executive order is the directions of how they're going to enforce this law or enact it. That's all an executive order is supposed to be. But it has grown into acts of legislation. Yes, sir.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming out and making this presentation. This is great information. I'm going to take a devil's advocate question here for you, okay?
Okay, just remember who you're going to be, though.
I'm a very practical person, and my observation is that the Constitution is widely disregarded already.
Yeah.
And this seems somewhat academic compared to present-day reality, boots
Sure.
on the ground reality.
Okay.
So my question would be, how do you get to, from where we are today, widely disregarded, nobody cares anymore, it seems, sadly,
Right.
to what you're talking about? And is there an interim step or a series of interim steps that have to happen before we can even get to that point where people start waking up and they start actually doing something and following the Constitution for a change?
There you go right there. I will be answering that question in more detail than you probably care. If you ate something, I hope I don't give you indigestion. Question, sir. The mic's coming. Okay, here's the mic.
I don't think that Washington State would be the state to say, oh, we're going to be the first ones to go against this. And we're from Idaho, and I don't even think Idaho would be it because we're sort of overwhelmed by Boise. What would be the best state to focus on? And if they said, we're going to do it, would other states go along with them? Do they have to?
Sure. Go ahead.
My only question is, I think you're brilliant and I'm loving this and I'm ready to hear the next part. Can you start?
I'm humbled. I have no idea why my hard studies and so forth really came to the fruition of finding these things. I have yet to have a presentation where somebody doesn't come up or make a comment, post comment to an email or something. Why hasn't anybody ever thought of this? I don't know. If you read my bio, I had classical training in intelligence. I was in the MN community for a long time. I had 35 years in the intelligence community as an analyst and so forth. And so that classical training has always tried to get me to look at the big picture. Well, what's the big picture? And the big picture was they're not following the Constitution. I know all of these things. And then I started putting it together. They called it a contract. So in looking at all the facts, I was able to quickly... Again, I don't know why anybody didn't think that we had these powers. Madison basically just didn't write it out. Please audit the Constitution when they get too far off track. Because he knew they would. He actually thought that the Constitution was going to die 50 years after 1830, because in 1830 he was talking at the Virginia State Constitutional Convention, and he basically made a public comment that he doesn't see this Constitution going another 50 years because as the states started growing, the interest of the hinterland and the inside or interior of the states were going to be completely different than the west or the east coast. And he said, as this thing grows, he didn't think this Constitution was going to match that. And again, I really don't think Madison, recognized the divine hand of providence of what they really gave us. He thought that it was just more of a mechanical thing. If you understand Madison, he really was very conscientious in trying not to, create associations between religion. And as a matter of fact, if you understand what Madison was doing with his executive orders of giving fast and prayer for specific issues to the nation, he rescinded half of those requests of prayer going out. In other words, he asked the nation to pray as they were preparing for something, and then he felt, you know what, I think I might be overstepping my bounds, and he rescinded some of those. And so he was very conscientious of trying not to step on people's religious expressions and trying to dictate to them what they had to do. So anyway, I probably digressed a little bit in giving you some history, but it is Obama's fault. I'll just let you know that. Anyway, any other questions or without?
Yes.
Okay.
When an audit is conducted, there are findings and recommendations that are made for, correction of corrective action.
Yep.
You've talked about the audit review. What do you see as the steps following that? I assume that if this was a management audit...
So that's my third book, and I've written it, but I haven't published it yet.
Okay. So you're going to keep us in suspense?
No. I just don't want to present that type of stuff now.
Okay.
The Constitution actually has all of this. The Constitution has the forces of what the states have, and to be able to, implement, their authority once again. But I'll get into that again when we're there. What I want to do is just get this out, this concept of being able to audit and stepping forward into taking the authority of the states and or the authority of the Constitution by the states back again and becoming a true constitutional republic. Okay? All right. Well, one more question. Yes, sir.
Well, one problem I like to suggest is some counties have sheriffs that have gone back to federal training on what the Constitution means, and they might not like what's being said and might want to stop it.
Oh, I can guarantee you that if my wife is very, very concerned. I go by GR. There's a reason for that. And it's not just those people. I'm really not too concerned about those people. I'm really more concerned about the people that will recognize that their billion-dollar, trillion-dollar industry, banking, and so forth will be truly impacted and affected, that we are actually going to take this country back by doing this. And they will lose their control over this country. If you garner that, as long as this message moves forward and it doesn't silence tonight, and it continues if everybody else tells an audience of 50 people and keeps going, because the whole point of creating these slides, I'll take this break right now and saying this, the whole point of creating these slides, and what I'm going to do next is kind of create the script so that people can get up and present these, go to another county. So I can't be everywhere. This is going to spread like wildfire if this starts moving. I can only be in so many places, so what I have to do is create constitutional warriors, and I need 100 in every state to be able to work in different counties and to be able to put the appropriate pressure where it needs to be applied at that given point in time. And so I truly am aware of what the threats are. My wife has pointed this out to me. And so I'm not too concerned with people that are teaching federalism. I mean, they're a little closer at least, right? They're a little closer than the progressives of democracy, and that we can do anything that we want to as long as we get the right votes and have a mob rule. So let me move forward.